Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Bill. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. I had trouble rolling out of bed today, but as soon as I had my hot water coffee thing, I popped right up. How about you?
I I snoozed.
Hmm.
I've been slacking. I've been trying not to be a snoozer for a very long time, and I'll have periods where I do better at it, and periods where I'm not doing very well. Currently, I'm not doing very well at like getting up at the first alarm, and so I snoozed. And when I snoozed, I accidentally hit the 10 minute. Or I'm sorry, I was trying to hit the 10 minute. I actually hit the 15 minute, and then
Hmm.
I was like, I'm gonna oversleep. I'm gonna oversleep the whole time. So that was a little while ago, but yeah, I feel that. But it's also starting to get a little bit cooler, which is super nice, which makes me want to
Hmm.
stay in bed. So yeah, it'll get worse before it gets better.
I got the hoodie out this morning. It's
Yeah, you
a little
did.
cool in the house, a little cool everywhere. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I
Now
also
you
had
look like a Sith Lord, which is exciting.
almost, if we do it right,
Almost. Yes. There you go. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, and you know what I also had this morning, which is kind of freaks you out. It's weird. It's where you get up and at like 5 or something, and then you go back to bed, and you have
Mm,
a dream in that
yeah.
section, and that last hour before you used to wake up or ever, and it was the weirdest dream. And I woke up and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on? This is weird." So it was a weird Friday morning, but I did have a good week.
Okay.
Um,
Tell me about that. What made it good?
well, lots of client work, which is always fantastic.
Yeah.
So spent some good time with client, crushed a couple calls with potential clients,
Mm-hmm.
and then screwed up pretty badly on one call, but very quickly
Ooh.
got redemption with the client on the same call and made up for it. So it was an exciting sort of ups and downs, and uh, nailed my tire from construction, and
Oh, that's.
power went out, no Wi-Fi, and was going to miss client calls.
Oh
So,
my
I mean,
gosh, man.
it was like a you know
The
telenovela,
the usual, right?
the usual.
Like each week is like it's not the usual in the fact that like the same stuff every week, but like
No.
there's always little bitty things. Like, is it when the power goes out? Does it
Mhm.
feel worse for you now that you're working inside of an organization and other people are attached to the team? Like does it feel any different than when you were out on your own?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it does. Yeah,
I feel
because
that.
it's because like you're not beholden to them, but you kind of are.
Kind
Where
of
it's like
are. Yeah.
because we're adults, and it's one of the major things I love about working for the company I work with is it's like, hey, we're all adults here. You handle your stuff, and
Yeah,
but if you don't want to let other people down, y-
for
you know.
sure. Yeah,
So yeah, it was a
absolutely.
little bit of a scramble. Like I had to go, and I won't name names yet, but I had to go to a co-working space that was ridiculous and hard to get into, and I had to create a profile on the spot on my phone that was really hard, and
Oh, yeah.
I had to pay way too much money, and I left way early, and they wouldn't rebate me any of the money, and like it was just like a whole
Oh.
thing, and it was
How
like,
like, okay, how much did you pay for a day?
oh, I didn't want to say it.
Now I gotta
40
know.
$47
$47 for 1 day of,
for a
like,
day
hot
rate.
desking? Oh my gosh, that seems
Yeah,
excessive.
that seems like San
Huh.
Francisco. That's not Dallas Fort Worth.
No, I think it'd be about 2 grand if it was San
Yeah, no, you're
Francisco. I
right. So
think
that was the Uber from one block down to get to it in San Francisco.
Yeah. Very fair.
Yeah.
Can you okay, I'm dying to know about how you ate it on a call and then got redemption on the same call. Can you give us a quick
Oh,
recap?
gosh, I'm not sure if I can do it quick. Essentially, what I did is there was somebody who was on video in or not on video in the corner.
Mhm.
And I normally Vanguard that at the beginning and be like, hey, this is a video call. We got to see each other's faces, da da da.
Yeah.
Well, it was so many people on the call, I didn't think to check and switch pages. And so
Mm.
it's on another page to call. And so we're about halfway through the call, and a couple people had to leave and pop up, and there it is. There's the black box in the corner with the S for Steve, was his name. And I was like, hey, quick second, you guys, who's Steve over there lurking in the corner? Steve, can we get you on video at all? And he pops on, and he's just like in his house, like
Mhm.
essentially on a phone. And I'm like, hey, Steve, what's going on, man? I'm Jake. And he's like, and it's Australian client. Good day, mate, And
Yeah.
I said, what's your role in the company? And everyone starts cracking up. And he was a co-founder and still the managing director. And And he was like, "Oh, I don't know if I help out with the team." And very humble guy, very cool.
Mhm.
And then everyone, like for the next 5 minutes, just giving me crap on the call about how I just called out the owner from his house on the black box. But then he decided he was going to participate on the call. So he jumped in, he started talking. He had some really strong like questions that I got to turn around and like create a moment essentially with the co-founder.
Yeah, that's
And so
fantastic.
by the end of the call, we're actually going to meet on a separate call and talk some more and work some other stuff out.
You're
So
gonna get promoted to customer? Is that what's gonna happen on this other call? Jake, let's set up a separate call from this one. We need to talk about some things,
yeah,
Yeah.
no, no. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun because man, I'll tell you, Australian and New Zealand clients are a lot of fun. They like
Yeah.
to joke around and
Yeah,
have a good time. So
for
it was
sure.
good. It turned out being a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. I'm glad.
Yeah. What
That's
about you?
this week has been awesome. More for Melissa, and since she never ever like, I'm like, hey, use the wind channel. You've had a strong week, and she's just like, no, I don't feel good. So I'm gonna do it on the show. So Melissa turned in a writing engagement for a client. Like she's new to doing client work, right? And so I sold the deal because she didn't feel comfortable doing it, but she turned in the work. It's going to be going in a very high level digital marketing periodical online. Let me phrase that with all the ambiguity that I can. And turned it into the client, and the client was like, "This is way better than I thought it was. No edits needed." And so Melissa had that moment of like, "No edits needed. What does that mean?" I'm like, "I think it means that you're good at what you do, but I'm not really sure yet." So, so that was good. We delivered a workshop for one of our clients about trying to like have a better view of like who they are and what they do, so that way Melissa, who's doing some of their writing, can align with their interior marketing person. That went off amazingly well. She's just killing it this week. So
That's great.
super excited about that. Try to bring someone onto my team for a project, and I've got some history with this person, and they've just not been the same caliber of person this time than they were last time. So I had to pause that last night, and now I'm looking for someone else to do that portion of it. Right, some sales assistants, right, helping me scrub lists, build lists, and things like that. So that's a little frustrating. I had a really great I had a really interesting conversation yesterday with a person who wants some help on the sales side and everything. And we have a great discussion. And he's a little in the weeds, right? So some of his marketing thinking and strategic thinking is kind of shut down because he's like so much in the weeds on the sales side that like, he's selling the problem. He's not actually selling any of the solutions or anything like that. And so
Mm.
we had a great call yesterday, and I was like, it kind of seems like you're selling the problem. And he's just like mad about it, but also like very aware that that is exactly what he was doing. And so he goes, well, I would like to talk more and I want to pay you for it. And I was like, dude, this is all just discovery to see if there's anything that I can help you with. So let's have another discussion. I'm not charging you for it because I don't even really know enough about what this thing is to like know if I can help you or if I should help you. But the knowledge is free. The implementation is what I charge for, kind of thing,
Right.
or helping you implement is something I can also charge for. And so we're having a follow-up call today. That was awesome and amazing. And we're doing another version of that kind of alignment workshop for the newest client today. So lots of interesting messaging stuff going on. I've had some really interesting conversations. We did more reps on stare, which is like a framework we've been using to do deep questioning and not just like ranging questioning. So we've done 2 weeks on that, and people like that. And I got the final version of that edited back from Melissa. So we're going to kind of distribute that in the Slack community and the clients and stuff. So it's been
Cool.
a good week. It's been a
That's fun.
solid week, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's cool. So we also we set ourselves some goals at the beginning of the week. So we should probably
Yes,
talk about that, right?
we should. Yeah.
Even though I don't want to.
So how's it going with the food, Jake?
Well, I'm glad you asked. It's okay. But the first step back for me is always doing all the good stuff and then getting rid of the bad stuff versus
Okay.
just cold turkeying. So
Okay.
I ate all the stuff that I was supposed to eat, but I also had crumble cookie this week, and I also had,
Okay.
you know what I mean? So the first goal was to get the good stuff in, right? It's because I
Okay.
wasn't eating the nutrition that I needed to eat.
Okay.
I didn't do that bad. I had two moments this week where I just went all out on the sugar.
I mean,
So
2 moments to where you have sugar after having a healthy meal. Like,
well, like I said,
is the
it's
standard
all
too high, bro?
contextual. It's all contextual.
I mean, are you eating a whole cake?
God, I wish. No. But crumble
Okay.
cookie is like 700 calories, like right away. So it's like
And
it was a big deal.
okay.
It wasn't like,
Okay.
hey, I had a Chips Ahoy Chewy from a bag from the store. It was like I'm consuming 500 more calories than I'm supposed to for my day in this one cookie, like sort
Wow.
of situation.
We approach the food thing very differently, my friend.
We do. I think we should talk more about this on another show, just
Yeah.
around the logistics of it, not the actual food itself, but like
Yeah.
how we think about it and how we plan for it and
Oh,
why we do it
yeah.
that way. And
I
it'd be
still have
fun.
so much army brainwashing like going in there of like, hey, when there's food in front of me, I must eat it all. Like because in the army you don't know when you're going to eat again, so make the use of it and everything else like that. And being an
Right.
80s kid, clean your plate club and all that stuff as a kid, you're not getting up from this table until all the hamburger helper is gone and all of that stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, so I have weird mental stuff about food.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yep. For sure. Well, okay. So technically 100% completed my goal this week to eat all the good stuff that I bought at the store. So I did that.
Mhm.
So next week we're gonna do something different. So we'll talk about that on Monday.
Okay, good.
What about you?
We've made no progress on the workout area, like whatsoever. Like we spent a day of like trying to find a trailer to get this old fridge out of there, and just like really couldn't find one easily that wasn't super expensive, and so have not made any progress on building that out. So the bikes are now hung up on the side of the wall, right? So they're up off of the floor. I'm excited about that, but we've not really made any other progress in that front, right? Melissa has been swamped and busy, and like last week was like a little stressed out, and I probably should have been a little bit more aware of it, right? But it's just one of those things to where I don't always see when she is stressed out. So right, that's something I need to work on as the leader.
Okay.
Thank you, Dylan. That's how I feel about it as well. Like man, you're it's like almost your like Spartan lifestyle, like nothing. I don't
Yeah.
think you're trying
Yeah.
to take it that far.
No, but there's parameters. There's always parameters that for your own success that you're headed towards, right? And
Hmm.
so if that's my, I have a particular north light, a direction I'm headed towards, and that's in between me and that, then I got to figure out a way to work around that. Because trust me, I've worked a long time in different methods and all sorts of stuff just to get to this point. So we even
Hmm.
talked about it on Monday. Is like this would seem ridiculous to some people.
That is true. That's very
So-
fair. I'll shut up. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
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 it's just my challenge.
yeah. That's fair. So the goal is no sugar at all.
No, and we'll talk about it more Monday, but the goal is
Okay.
control over sugar,
Okay.
where that it just doesn't. When I see it, I go, "Oh, I gotta have it."
I'm about to get lost in a John spiral of questions.
You
So
are, and then
like you're showing me a puzzle that doesn't seem all that clear to anybody other than you, and I just can't let it stand.
yeah, no,
So
but we have a guest that's going to be
we
so
have
much
a
better than my
guest today.
silly little puzzle.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
yes,
let's bring our guest on.
let's do that. Okay, here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1, and guest.
Good morning.
Bethany, good morning. How are
Hello,
you?
John. How are you? I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm good. We
Jake,
have a
you gotta
little
know.
lag, which is normal when we bring on a guest. It'll clean up in a few minutes, though.
Awesome.
Just
Jake,
normal.
you got to know that there's sugar in everything. When I started looking at it, like pasta
know.
sauce, ketchup,
I know.
it's
Trust
tough.
me.
They sneak it in everywhere.
They do. That's what makes it so hard. That's why you're so hooked.
Yes. But those crumble cookies, those are next level. So, sometimes you got to indulge, I guess.
I was going to ask.
Thank
Did you
you.
know crumble
Yeah.
cookie?
So, Bethany, I've known you, I think we're coming up on a decade now. I think.
Oh, yeah. Long time.
For
Yeah.
a long
Wow.
time, right? And
Yes.
No level.
yeah, like you work in this realm. Your husband also works in this realm. I've known you both for a very long time. And
Yep.
I wanted you to come on to talk very specifically about community because you have some very cool things, some very cool vision about where you think community is going to go. And Jake and I are both obviously big fans of community. So I wanted to bring you in and kind of talk about what you're doing in that realm, how you're working with brands to kind of help them build communities and things like that. So can you talk a little bit about what you're doing right now in your consulting and how you're helping clients?
Sure. So right now I'm working with a company called Numina, and we are building a community of freelancers and founders. And it's a startup, so those are always fun. It's a different breed, but I think the need is there, whether it's a startup or an established company, to really kind of understand community and be in touch with people's, clients, customers. And I think that there's brands that really get it right, and then there's brands that really aren't able to get it right. And there's, various reasons. I think there's a misconception that community and social media are the same thing, and they're not. I
They're
think,
not.
when I get like posts from like Angel List and people are like, oh, I want a head of community and we pay $32,000 a year. It's like, who do you expect to run this community for that kind of money? And you're in touch with people's customers, and
Yes.
people need to put some resources behind it. So in addition to my consulting, I am hoping to build out some learning series and resources around taking community to the next level, because I really believe that community leaders should have a seat at the executive table. I think that the work they do impacts pretty much every area of the business, and it should be realized as such. And they kind of act as the voice of the customer and really should be part of the decision making.
I love that. And the first time you said that line about how it should be an executive, I was holy crap! Like I hadn't even thought about that, because where realistically, where else would it fall? Right? It's not the same thing as like social media marketing, right? It's not the same thing as success and stuff, and I think you can get some really cool opportunities to get feedback and like early stage feedback and really, improve the marketing and alignment and everything else with it. Um, who do you think is doing a good job with the community building brand wise now?
So I think there's a lot of companies that are starting to do really well. Randomly, Oatly is a really cool brand that is doing some really exciting things with
Okay.
community. There's a yogurt brand called Siggy's, and they are doing some really interesting things with community. On a B2B, or like a more like SaaS and different like technology field, HubSpot is, I think they have a gold standard of a lot of the stuff that they do. But they didn't always get it right. I worked very early on with them when they were developing Hugs, which are in-person groups that also have an online component. And, there was some mistakes and stumbles, but, they took the learnings from that, and I think have really invested in being better and doing better. They've built out a team, and I think that they do amazing work.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
The idea of having a hybrid as well as a digital, sorry, Bill, is like a unique thing, because I worked in a role for a little bit to where like I was trying to foster the community of DFW as well as like an online community. And like my pushback was, they were like, why are people from Fort Worth going to Dallas? And I'm like, oh, you don't really know how this works, and I was just kind of like trying to like give them the lay of the land and everything. That's fascinating. I didn't even know that they had like in-person groups that also map to like kind of digital stuff. That's really cool.
I think a lot of it changed with COVID, so there were a lot of
Yeah.
in-person groups and they were solely in person. And then COVID happened and they had to rethink what they were doing. So a lot of companies pivoted. And then there were a lot of companies and just even social groups that started online communities because people need connection. And whether it be with a brand or whether it be with a friend, there were a lot of people lacking that during COVID. So I think community really boomed and became this like hot topic and buzzword, and everybody kind of jumped on the bandwagon. And the really good players in the game stood out, and the ones that were not doing so well also stood out. So COVID kind
Yeah.
of reshaped the way community is in the world.
Yeah. So Bethany, would you give us what your definition of good community is?
Ooh.
I always equate community to Cheers, the old TV show.
Yes.
So
Yes.
somebody knows your name. They're so glad you came. And that is how when I talk about community, you matter. And I think that's important, to feel like you matter. I think it's important with a brand to think your voice matters. I think in a social group, it's important to know that people care and want your opinion and value your membership. And so that's kind of how I describe community is Cheers. Like, you show up and people know you and they want to engage with you. And I just think it paints a picture. I guess people who are not as old as I am may not get the picture as well. But basically, it's a place where you're welcomed and you're wanted and you are valued.
Yeah, that's good for us old people. It's Cheers what makes it work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But so that's something that as a feeling, right? And if you're in one, you can feel it.
Yep.
Right. But from the other side, it seems like that could be hard to measure. How do you
Very
go about
hard to measure.
figuring that out?
Well, it is very hard to measure. And like, I work with big brands. I work with Etsy, and that's a huge global brand. And really a lot of it is sentiment. And that's hard. I mean, it's hard to measure that. And so it's really kind of going old school and watching how people are talking and what they're saying, and literally keeping all of that in a report and assigning like a level to it. Like, this is positive, this is negative. And, I think that's one of the reasons that some executives have a hard time getting behind community, is because there is a lot of gray. There's a lot of gray. And the ROI of what community does isn't always black and white, and it isn't always seen today. So, ticket deflection. If you have a community where other community members can say, hey, I have this problem, and other community members jump in and say, oh, here's what you do. Well, maybe that deflected a ticket from your service team. But how do you always catch those are happening, those conversations? And two, how do you put a number behind it? And that's why I think that some brands really struggle behind starting community, doing them well, or putting resources behind them.
Good. Because my question that was looming, and you kind of brought it up there, was, there's lots of leaders who were like, okay, what is the ROI of this, right? How do we plan for this? How do we budget for it and stuff, right? And when in those conversations with you, right, like, I love the idea of, kind of assigning sentiment to it, but like, when leaders are kind of pushing of like, okay, what do we expect to get for this? What do we think the ROI is going to be? I imagine, like, you can't say, okay, you're going to get a 3x ROI on this kind of thing, right? So how do you talk about that with leaders who are a little too maybe short-term focused on the community building?
Yeah, and that's tough. And one, I always reiterate that community is a long game. It is not something that you do, and it's not a one-time campaign that you pull off. Then you do try to put some hard and fast numbers around it, around growth. You monitor, tickets of members versus non-members, like service tickets. You look at members, what they spend, for a product or service, or adding, different things to their packages versus non-members. And usually you will see that members actually spend more. So it's a great place to have an ear to the ground to upsell, or when I worked with Segment, and we would listen for people who maybe didn't have certain add-ons to their packages, but they would ask questions about it, and then it would become a warm conversation instead of guessing, do these people need it or do they not need it, are they curious? And it just gave some context to add to the conversation. And by and large, the people who were in the community, the companies who had representatives in the community, spent more with the company, and those are black and white numbers. So there is some reporting you can do that is black and white and number driven, but it also always, in my opinion, has to be mixed with sentiment, because there's the way people perceive the brand. There are some like wins. Jake, before I got on, you talked about creating a moment. And I think that's something that communities, if they're done well, really do. They do things that can't scale, but that they create moments which ripple out, where people talk about, oh, so-and-so, I was in this community and this happened for me. A group that's really good about that is Peloton. If there's a big win in the Peloton community, Peloton will send flowers. If there's a death, they will send flowers. Another group that does this very well is Chewy, the dog brand. And, creating these moments turns into these big ripples that it may be one-to-one, but then it becomes one-to-many, because that person that you touch talks about it and is excited about it. And so I think that's part of the magic of community.
That's wow. I haven't even thought about it at that level. I'm just thinking about, Facebook groups, Slack communities, Discord communities, and things like that. Like, I'm not even thinking about brands doing that just like as like a sign of, I guess, like nurturing, kind of
Sure.
thing. That's huge. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about tech. So when it comes to community platforms, right, and putting a place, right, if you're trying to build like a community and stuff like this, are you seeing any cool software or SaaS platforms, things like this, that people are building communities on? Ones that you like, ones you don't like?
I really like Circle, but the issue that a lot of communities find when they move from Circle, a lot of them move from Facebook to Circle, and
Hmm.
Circle is a destination. You have to want to go open it. Whereas
Yes.
Facebook, you might scroll and see an interesting conversation in a community you're in, and you might stop and you might engage. So you really have to provide a reason for people to keep coming back on a
Yeah.
regular basis. And it can't just be like, conversation that's happening in the community. Maybe you're doing some lives that are only available in Circle, or there's discussions that you're hosting. People need to realize that going on, that if you're coming from Facebook to Circle or probably any other platform, initially you'll probably see a drop off in engagement just because
Yep.
it's not something you happen upon anymore. But you own your data, which is you know Facebook does a lot with your data, and so
Yeah.
and there's been horror stories of people getting like kicked off Facebook, not able to access their group. So that,
Yep.
I mean, you have to weigh which one is going to work for you. But there's pros and cons to both of them. Discord is another one. I like it, but there is a learning curve for the everyday person to be on
Yep.
Discord. The everyday person, when I've interviewed them, does not like the interface of Discord. Now, people who are more into tech and they're more tech savvy really enjoy Discord. So I think it's
Hmm.
really looking at your audience and meeting them where they are, and then really building out a value added program so that people have something where they come in and immediately get value, and it's not just conversation in the community, because I think that especially if you move to a third party platform, you have to offer more than just having random conversations.
I that so when I was first launching a group, I wanted to build it not on Facebook, right? Because I was trying to build like a place, more of a destination, not as just like a passive kind of thing. And so I built my first one in Discord, and it was around like business culture, right? So not really a lane that I occupy a lot, just something that I'm very interested in. And the pushback was, A, there was a huge drop off in getting people to come over there and interact, right? And really, it kind of came down to my ego, right? Because like my community now is on Slack, right?
Mm.
Because that is where the people who should be in the community are already hanging out, right? So it's easy; they can see parts of it and stuff like that. And I think I love that point, because like I talk about that with people as well. If you move your group off of Facebook, you're going to get better data and everything, and you're going to have like, it's kind of like, don't care about like the full size of the email list, care about like how many people actually open the emails and stuff, because one's a
Exactly.
vanity metric and one is an actual
Mhm.
effective metric. And yeah, so it's been very interesting. And like looking back now, it's like, why would I try to put it all the way out there over on Discord, like just for my ego? Because like I wanted a place to come that you wouldn't be flooded with like work stuff, right, or like social stuff. So that's why I was like, no Facebook, no Slack. But this is where these people were hanging out, right? So like I was just kind of making it harder for no really great reason. And so it's been quite the experience building one internally, or starting one. um, where do you think what do you think brands who are building community now need to be thinking about to be like still leading the pack in community in like 5 years? Do you have any vision on that?
I think that brands need to stay in touch with their customers. And I think that, I think so many products get built without the customer in mind, and customers' problems in mind.
Yeah.
And communities give you an insight into what people are thinking, how they're using your product. And I think that there are a lot of companies that have communities and they don't listen. Like you might have somebody say X widget doesn't work for this use, and 100 people agree, but then they make X widget do that use. And, I really think that it's a matter of taking what you hear in the community and doing something with it. Because after a while, if people feel ignored, even if you have a community, if they feel like they've given you feedback, they've talked about things that they want, they've talked about features, and you continue to build the complete opposite and create the complete opposite experience for them, you're going to lose customers. There's going to be churn. The other thing is, I think that you need to involve community members. I think some of the healthiest communities that I've seen have moderators that are actually like customers, that are actually people in the community, and it lends a bit of authenticity to the community where people don't just feel like, oh, it's so and so trying to sell or trying to do this. No, you have a team of people that are doing the same thing that you're doing. Etsy does this really well in their seller community. They have some people that have really big voices, and they rally around them. They actually have a conference that they send some people to, and it's really neat to see that they're that in touch, because people might say something to somebody that they see as an equal, somebody who's going through the same problems that they're going for, versus a company representative, and that needs to be something that's realized and a part of the strategy. The other thing that I want to just interject here is that not every company needs a community. I feel like people do it because it's a buzzword. If you don't feel like you can put the resources behind it, if you don't have a strategy behind it, don't do it. Because here you're messing with your customers, and it's just not a smart business decision on any level.
That's the nugget, right? Because this is like the shiny thing right now, and everyone is getting very excited about it, and lots of brands are going to do it, and then they're going to abandon ship, and then it's going to be a ghost town, right? And I'm in a couple of communities that started off very strong, and then like the dust settles and you kind of see like there's not a whole lot going on here and stuff like that, and it feels worse than if they just didn't have it at all, right? Like I'd rather you not have this thing and a link to this thing if it's not actually being serviced and being listened to and stuff like that. And this brings up a really interesting point, because I've had this thought all this week, and I've been meaning to talk to Jake about it, but we're going to talk about it on Monday, and now that you're here. So I have been thinking this week about building a board of directors for my community, so that way I don't accidentally make a stupid decision and ruin some of the momentum and the coolness of the community that we build, but also just that way I can get other people into like the vetting process and stuff like that, and like really kind of driving some other cool things inside the community, because I sometimes don't think of that stuff, right? So if I can have other people around me. So this is so exciting, because I've been thinking about this all week, and I've been very excited, and also like how do I talk about it? How do I roll this thing out in the community? I've been not struggling with it, because I'm excited to do it, but it's been front and center in my mind all week. That is very cool. I'm glad that other people are doing that, because it feels like it's almost time in my community, which is interesting.
I love that you are bringing other people in. The other thing on a community manager front, community leader front, it can be lonely. And there's a lot of boundaries that you have to be steadfast in, and a lot of community managers aren't. They get a ping at 1 a.m. on a Saturday, and they're just trying to answer so quickly, and really there needs to be an expectation that community managers, community leaders, they are people too, and they have lives outside of communities, and that's another really important thing, because a lot of times it can be a thankless job. And when there's not boundaries, there's not expectations that are clear, it can be very exhausting. There's a lot of burnout. So I love the idea that you have of bringing in additional people to help with various aspects. I also think, part of the beauty of community is different voices. And I think representation matters.
Absolutely.
And having those different voices is important and adds to the color of the conversation.
Yeah. Your husband and I were in a networking group for a while, right? And he was part of, I think he was part of the board, right? So he was part of the vetting process, right? He was kind of interviewing, and I've been in two networking groups where I was part of the board and part of the vetting process, and it flushed it out, right? It was there was some redundancy there. There was some additional voices. So when I thought about this week and got so excited about it, it wasn't like a wholly new concept. It was just taking it from like in-person networking and applying it to digital, because, just everybody in the Slack community I've had a call with, which I think is kind of like a unique kind of thing and not very common in lots of these communities. So I want to keep that vibe, but if I bring in 8 people, that means that I've got to have had 8 conversations with those people, right? So if I want to have a growth goal, which makes me a little bit nervous as far as like being able to maintain the vibe that's in there, because it's very, I think it's fun, but it could change, right? And if you have too many of the wrong people in there, the vibe will change, right? And so, yeah, that I'm excited to do it. I'm also excited to figure out where the gaps are, right? Because like, it's a new thing. So of course it's going to be a little bit frictionful and have to figure out some stuff. So yeah.
Bethany, do you see a lot of times that just the intention going into groups makes or breaks if the community works or not?
100%. I would say 100% of the time, if you are building a community to get sales and that's the only thing that you're trying to do, it will fail. You will launch with a lot of fanfare. Usually those types of groups, they have a lot of money behind the launch and it is so exciting and it's all of this, but within 30, 60, 90 days, it is dormant. And like John said, it's a detractor. I would have rather them not have started the group because the damage that they did to their brand takes a long time to recover from. It takes away trust. Communities are built on trust. They're built on rituals that you create, celebrations you create within the community. And if you don't do that and build those kind of communities, and you build it with only what can I get from people, you're doomed to fail. Nobody wants to feel
Yeah.
like they are being used. And I feel like when communities are built with only the company in mind, that is how community members feel.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like it's the opposite way around. Like the community is for the community, and then it works, huh? Like it's
Yeah,
surprise, right?
I'm in a couple of the other communities to where you can tell it's just a bed for being sold to, or for, hey, do you like this, guys? And it just feels so inauthentic. And what's really interesting, right, is that if they run that thing for long enough, they will have people who want that community vibe, right? Because like I've seen that in some places too, to where like the fanboyism of it causes this kind of weird tribalism and everything. And like these people like don't even see that they're just being sold to and used for like testing, right? There's
Sure.
not that it doesn't feel like a real community to me. And like that bothered me like starting out. And now just kind of like I can appreciate marketing that isn't built for me now, but like it used to really annoy me. This is terrible marketing. No, just terrible for me. Like there's community is gonna have that same vibe. So you can't go to one and be like, oh my God, this is just a complete waste of time. Like you have to, find a vibe, make sure that like the culture in that community suits you, right? And also going back to the platform thing, that it's on a platform that you're either going to go check or you're checking naturally as part of your day.
Sure.
That's interesting.
And John, you brought up like trying to intentionally build your community and have growth, but worrying about it losing what it is today. And that is a real concern of a lot of brands that I work with. And, you have to be really intentional about what you do. And I really believe that even the largest communities do things that won't scale. Even today, they do things that won't scale because it goes back to creating those magic moments. And a lot of the huge communities out there, they have little offspring communities. And, those have to be done with intentionality too, because then it can be where it takes away from the main community. And, the main community becomes dormant. And, there's a lot of strategy behind what does that look like and who do we bring in to make it where that doesn't happen, or that we do it with the strategy and being intentional in mind. And, communities can grow too quickly. To me, the sign of a healthy community is you start out with heavy moderation. You start out with you're really on it. You're feeding conversations, but eventually the pendulum swings and the community is creating those conversations, and you are just there more as a bystander and a supporter than the person that's always seeding the conversation or prompting the community. But yeah, it does take intentionality, and I feel like it is a scary thing for brands, both big and small. But there are companies that do it well because they make a strategy for it. It's not just something that happens. They plan for growth. They do set growth goals, and they say, what does it look like when we reach 100,000 members? What is that experience like? But you would be surprised at how many companies don't even think that far in advance. They don't think about it. It just naturally happens. And when those things happen and you don't have a strategy behind it, it makes it really tough to maintain what was special about the group at the start.
So it's a little bit like brand, I would say, right? Like you have to put in the intentional work into like brand standards and, the vibe you're trying to create and stuff like that, because otherwise it's just like, you're going to have one out there. It might not be the one that you want. You might be detached from it. So I love that. If someone is building a community, at what level should they be thinking about bringing in a full-time dedicated community person? Is it a growth around the community? Is it a certain like how do you advocate that in your conversations with people?
It is, if it's a company, I think it should be from day one. I think you need to have somebody that is the kind of like the person that's watching out and really putting thought and strategy, and really, again, being the person that says, I own this. I'm going to make this work. I am going to be the voice of the customer. I think that if it's not started that way, it's really tough to go back and change some of the mistakes. Not impossible, but communities do have their own like personality, and you miss some of that nuance if somebody's kind of doing it just on the side, or they're just trying
Yeah.
to kind of phone it in, or like I said, a lot of people put community under social media, and they're two different things. Like, to me, social media is
Agreed.
broadcast, whereas community is conversation. And I think that for a person who's like a solopreneur that's trying to start a community around their brand, I feel like usually they are a little bit more invested, and they spend a lot of time on their communities. And at that point, I think that you should do it until you could do it on your own, until you realize that it's impacting your life. Like, you can't be on 24 hours a day. Like, that's a problem I think that entrepreneurs, founders, business owners, they don't set boundaries, because they want to get that next sale, they want to please their client, they want that interesting conversation in the community to keep going. But mental health matters.
Yes.
And being able to step away. So when you get to a point where it is not healthy for you to continue managing a community 24/7, I think that you should ask for help.
Yeah, I love starting with the intention. I also love the ability of, like, I love, because, like, they all have a little bit of a different vibe, right? And you're going to get, like, you're going to phrase things differently in communities, just like you would in friend circles and things like that. You said something earlier about it being lonely, right? And then also about this kind of like tipping point that happens inside of a community at a certain point and everything. And I have felt a couple of moments, right, to where it's like I'm just shouting into the void and trying to force this thing to happen, right? Like, knowing that as growth happens and the community grows, that eventually we'll hit that tipping point. But I've been kind of leading with this, that if I'm not engaging in there, no one else is going to be engaging in there, right? But I still have those moments of feeling like, oh, that kind of pressure of like, okay, how do I show up in the community today?
Yep.
Do you have any tips about for that, for people who are still at that place to where they're still growing their community? It's not really hit that tipping point to where like conversations are happening without them. Like, any tips or thoughts for those people who might be struggling with that?
Well, first of all, I put out there that you're a person, and I think authenticity in the group. So if you are struggling, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, this has been a rough week, and I'm showing up here, and I'm showing up as I am, and I'm meeting you guys where I am. And I think that people value that, because when you act like you have it all and everything's hunky dory, and it's just, that's not real life. And the thing about community is they're real people. It's real life. We all have struggles. The other thing is, I think that there is most of the platforms do have some automation. And I think that learning to leverage some of the tools in a way that kind of takes some of the pressure off of you is important. I don't think that everything in community should be automated, but there are tools that are there for a reason. And there are, like one of the things, Facebook, they have questions you can ask. So you don't have to go and like message everybody, hey, what do you think of this, before you get in. And Circle has a lot of tools as well to automate some of the, maybe you do like a Monday moment. What was your win from last week, or Wednesday wins? And those prompts could be automated, and then you join in the conversation when it starts. But really, you're not going to be able to really meaningfully serve anybody in your community if you are depleted, if you aren't showing up for the right reasons, if you're tired. And so I am a huge advocate of taking care of yourself, being real with your community members. I've never been a part of a community where somebody faults the community manager for being real. Like, hey, I've had a tough week. It was really hard for me to show up here today, but I value the community here. I get encouragement from the community here. And so here I am. And I think people more than anything appreciate that.
Yeah, I do. I know I do
Yeah.
for sure. Every community that I'm in, that I stay in, has either a moderator or a founder or some sort of leadership that has that sort of personality, because it's almost like I know it's someplace that I can come and actually get the help I need, not just a bunch of specific kind of pillars of knowledge and information and quizzes.
Yeah.
And like, if that's not there, then I normally don't stick around very long.
Exactly. And
So,
I think that one of the dangers of social media is that everything looks perfect. And the thing about community that's different than social media, things not perfect, and it's okay. And we are celebrating the imperfections. We are learning from each other. We are going down this journey together. And that's what creates relationship. That's what creates camaraderie. Relationships aren't built when everything's perfect. They're built when there's a struggle, when people are wanting to learn and other people are wanting to pitch in. And that's the beauty of community. It peels back all of the facade of the filters of social media and the perfectness that people see, and it brings us back to who we are, which is all humans. We're all people. We're all going through this life together. Your struggles may be different than mine, but maybe I can offer a piece of encouragement to you and you can offer a piece of encouragement to me, and we are on this journey together. And again, I just think that's what makes communities different and makes communities special. And that is built with intentionality and really taking a human first approach.
do you think that people stick with communities if it's not something that they're genuinely interested in? Like, because you can pop in a community and kind of look for an answer and some do some things like that, right? But like, long ago, Seth Godin talked about tribes, right? And the people that you draw into groups of people that you enjoy. Do you think that long-lasting communities have an element of that that's required?
Yes, I do think that, there are topics that you might show up for, but the reason that you stay around is because you found a tribe. And, like my best friend, she worked with the Blue Zones, and, they did a big Blue Zone project in Fort Worth. And so she was on some of the teams, and they had that commonality, but it's been years and they still meet together because they kind of found, and they literally call it a tribe. They found their tribe. And the same with community. I mean, you could go in and it could be transactional, I guess, where you go in and you seek out an answer. But if you do have some of those moments where somebody shows you that they care, and it's not just about finding an answer, that's what brings you back. That's what keeps you engaged. One of the challenges community leaders face is that, there's like a 90% of people who in communities are what's called lurkers. So you have 90% that are lurkers, 8% that are somewhat engaged, and another 2% that are like your super users. So, creating moments that, like, why do the lurkers stay? Why do they stay? Probably some of them have learned things, but how do you engage them in a way that they go to the next level? And those are those one-on-one moments. And then how do they go to super users? And that's when people really feel the value in the community, is they really feel like you've made an impact in their lives and they want to give back. They want to participate. And, so that's always top of mind is how to create those moments that are not transactional, that are going to keep people coming back, and create sticky community members.
I love that.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, like, I think lurkers are interesting too, because we've dealt with people who are lurkers on different things. John and I both on projects together, and a couple I had a few years ago where in person I would see them at some event and they'll say, "Hey, I watch your show." I'm like, "And who are you?" Like, I've been watching it for 2 years. Like, why haven't you said anything? But like, they still stick, right? So it's such an interesting dynamic when you're building a community and trying to measure it and trying to see if you're doing a good job. And knowing that there's lurkers out there that are getting value that just will never say anything unless maybe they see you or things like that. So
They won't say anything to you. They won't say anything to you, but lurkers, usually the lurkers I know, tell other people. I saw Jake today. His show was amazing. So there are brands that think that I've worked with that think lurkers have no value, but I think the opposite. I think that those are the people that are really soaking it in and they're really taking in what you're saying. They're staying and they're sharing, but it may not be to you. It may be to other people, which is a value add for you.
It's better. Ultimately, I'd rather tell other people than me.
there was like such a weird moment because like I lurk a lot, right? And I've always been a big lurker in like online communities until I decided to kind of step forward. And I remember I was just making content on LinkedIn, right? I was just writing and posting daily and everything. And then someone was like, "Hey, I've never commented on your stuff, but I really like it." And I was like, like, I have a lurker, right? And I was just so excited. And there's people in the community. Like we had when I was at SaaStr, I was talking with Will Aiken, who's like a comedy salesperson on TikTok and LinkedIn, and he gave me like the best compliment. He's like, you've got a great little pocket of community over there. And I was like, dude, I didn't even know you actually like hung out. Like I know you're in there, but like I don't know that you're active in there and stuff like that. And like that's the coolest thing, right? I love that people can come into the Sherpa community and like we talk about a lot of different things, but you know, I think we're doing a good job of diving into that and not just like keeping it like so much of social media stuff are like these maxims almost, right? And there's no depth to them, right? And they're super easy to misinterpret and stuff like that. And I think a community can be a great place to like disseminate those things and really dive into them, right? With peers and everything. And I think we do an okay job of like really kind of hauling out all the stuff behind the curtain inside of Sherpa Slack. But
yeah, I think communities, you know, the results that you see, you know, there's that graph that has the little tip of the iceberg above the water, and then below is this huge part of the iceberg. And that's what I think about communities. You will only probably ever see the tip of the iceberg, but underneath you are impacting lives. Like John, in your community, one of the things that probably people get when they work through a problem is confidence. And then they walk into their workplace or they walk in with a client and they have confidence, and that spreads. Like how much impact and you know, I talk about legacy a lot in my own life. You don't know the legacy of how you touch somebody. Maybe you giving somebody that confidence changed the way that they interact, helped them make sales. They were able to send their child to college or to do some kind of adventure. You never see all of those things. And so when you're dealing with people, I always, you know, you're creating a legacy that you probably will never see. And people think, oh, it's a business group or it's a business community. That doesn't mean that we're not people. And, you know, showing up for people with like love and care and wanting to support them, even in a business environment, in a business community, it can ripple out into people's lives, into communities. And that is why I think community deserves a seat at the executive table, because I believe community has the power to change the world. And, you know, if people show up for each other, and, you know, we are a very divided country right now. I think conversations can change that. Conversations, and I'm not saying every community needs to have a political, you know, conversation, because it shouldn't. But I think if you realize that people might have other opinions than you, and you're able to respect them and value them and see, you know, maybe they don't agree with what I'm saying, but I can learn something from them and they can learn something from me. If you're able to change your mindset and really approach your entire life with that, how different would the world be? And so that's why I guess community is near and dear to my heart, because I see it being so much more than in the walls of an organization or in the walls of, you know, just inside that community. I see it being something that changes the world.
Totally agree.
Wow. That's
Totally.
rad. That's
Love it.
fantastic. I love that so much. I love it is so apparent how much time you've spent thinking about this and working on this, right? Like, you know, because, you know, it is a bit of a buzzword right now, right? And lots of people are jumping on the community. You need to have a community, right? And it's kind of like, we should be a media company. Okay, what does that mean? You know, thing. And I can tell you've put a ton of effort into this stuff and really thinking about it and like pushing back, and I love it. That's makes my day. I'm so excited. And I love this thing that you're talking about, like lurkers and super users. And this is probably a terrible thing to start thinking about, but how can I convert lurkers into super users, right? As like a path. I think that would be a cool thing to kind of build inside of my own community. But I also want people to be able to come in and do what they want to do with it, right? So if you just want to come in and lurk, you know, I'm in like 15 Slack communities, right? And the majority of them I'm not like actively engaging in and things like this. I'm just kind of hanging out, kind of shaking the trees and seeing how it's ran, you know. And but that is very interesting to me. I'm like, the wheels are spinning, so we're gonna not get a whole lot of work done today potentially, because I'm gonna be stuck thinking about this. But
I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. And the rituals and celebrations, right? Like, this is something I'm not good at, right? Because I'm not the warmest person, right? I'm very critical. I'm very like task focused. I like getting lots of stuff done. So this idea of rituals and celebrations is also very interesting, because while we have a wins channel, like I don't even have it set up so that everyone hits the wins channel, right? Because, you know, it was a kind of a later addition. And so not everybody's in there. So then not everyone is sharing their wins. And then, you know, like I need to go work on that, like in a meaningful way, and not just be like, okay, cool, everyone hop in the Wins channel, and stuff like that, because that typically doesn't work either, right? Because you kind of have to have guidance, but not like an iron grip on the thing, and
For sure.
Melissa and I, because like I was kind of having this thing of, because some people have left the community because Slack is a productivity killer, right? If you don't manage it well, if you don't have the right kind of notification set up with the right kind of filtering and stuff. And I've had some people be like, hey man, I gotta leave this thing because it's just like too much. I'm like, okay, cool, I get this. And the board of directors idea came from the idea that I was going to reorganize all the channels, so that way like general and random were like kind of still there, but then there were like pockets of these other things. So that way, if you wanted to go get lost in a conversation about like anime, which happened in my community, like last week, we got way off in the deep end about anime. Like not everybody wants that, right? So like I was super excited. I'm talking to Melissa about this thing, and she goes, in your community, like for these people though, like aren't you concerned at all that you're going to lose some of the momentum? And I was like, well, I am now. Like that's a very fascinating thing that just kind of show up and drop in my lap as my partner who lurks in my community. She never posts, she never comments, she never does anything, but she hangs out in there. And so that's where I was like, whoa, I might have accidentally done something detrimental to the flow and the momentum of this thing, and I don't want to do that. I should probably add some other decision makers to this thing, so that way I don't accidentally ruin it. So
Yep. And I think that's where you can involve community members. And if they feel vested in the community, like ownership in the community, they're more willing to forgive if there is a misstep. And, hey, we tried this, it didn't work. We had a group of people and we talked about it. We thought it would work and we didn't. I feel like people are more forgiving when, it's like with your kid, when they make a mistake or do something really bratty and you're like, ugh. But if it's somebody else's kid, you're like, get that kid under control.
Absolutely.
So you're a little bit more forgiving when it's your own, and you have a little bit of ownership in it.
That's fantastic.
And I will say my kids are never bratty. My kids are.
And I will say everyone else's kids are very bratty, but mine are great.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I go so far as to say I don't like other kids, but I like mine. Like I don't even go so far as like
really cool though. Just on a real one of the things that I admire about you is you've stayed close to your daughter, and I think that's hard as kids get older to stay close and like relevant to their parents being relevant, and you just seem very relevant in your daughter's life, and I think that's a huge thing. Going
Thank you.
the world and feeling like your parents have your back and that you actually want to hang out with them. So those are goals for me. My kids are a little younger. They like me, but I hope that doesn't disappear.
Wow. That first of all, thank you for the compliment, because I do put a lot of work into my relationship with Alice, and it is a unique thing, and I'm pretty lucky because like she does still want to hang out. She does still like enjoy spending time like just us and having that stuff. But yeah, thank you for that. That made my day. I like it. A compliment about the book is great. A compliment about being a good parent is like next level. So thank you for that. That's awesome.
What I honestly think it is, and I've talked to my husband Chris about it, is you realize that she's an individual and you support the fact that she's her own person.
Yeah.
So that's what I think you do really well. And from the time she's been little, I feel like you've done that really well, is like let her explore and have room to grow and be who she is instead of who you or Melissa want her to be. She is her own person. And you guys have done really good job of supporting her as she grows and learns who she is.
Thank you.
I'm loving this. This is like the most uncomfortable 2 minutes we've ever had on Bill.
I know. Yeah. Like I'm so excited, but I'm also like deeply uncomfortable. Like she just recently like cut off all of her hair. Like it's super, super short, and so she comes home and she's like, what do you think? And I was like, well, how do you feel about it? And she's like, I love it. And I was like, cool. Like, because like, I'm still like, she comes home and doesn't look like my kid anymore. She looks like a young person, which is like a different thing. Right. And Jake has talked about like having another man in the house and stuff like this, right? There's a place where they transition into this other thing. And I was like, she goes, well, do you like it? And I was like, well, I got to be honest, I'm going to miss that long hair, but if you're happy about it, like I'm just happy for you. Right. And it's those things. I don't coddle her. I don't, and even when she was 2, like people would always be blown away of like, is that how you always talk to her? And I'm like, why would I talk to her any other way? She's just a human, kind of thing. So yeah, it's been the coolest project for sure.
I love that.
Thank you. Thank you for the compliment. I'm going to be floating on that all day. But we got to go. we have to wrap up this. I don't even want to do anything else today except just like noodle and sit and think about the Sherpa Slack community and like all of the stuff we've been talking about. Thank you so much for coming in here. I have things on the board. I have things I'm going to ask Jake about as soon as we're here, or like as soon as we're off of this call. And yeah, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Well, I've loved it too, and I appreciate you guys having me on. And I love what you guys are doing. And just remember, when you work with people and in communities, you are. I always say you're a world changer. So go out and change the world. Go out and do good.
That's
Pressure.
Awesome. Bethany, where can people find you?
Yes.
You can find me on LinkedIn, Bethany Handy. I am on Twitter at Handy Bethany, and my email address, I'm always available. Personal one is BethanyHandy@gmail, which is the easiest one to. And if you are a freelancer founder and you want to be a part of a really cool community, it's Noumena.pro, Noumena.pro, and I would love to have you.
That would be awesome. The Noumena community is huge. I'm on that platform as well. I don't post a lot. I'm lurking over there, but some really good stuff, really, really cool value, and their long-term vision of what they're trying to do to help freelancers is phenomenal. So go check it out if you're in that freelancing space. And Bethany, I would love for you to come hang out in the Sherpa community, so that way I can have that inside voice, right? Of, just come hang out. I'm not going to put any pressure on you or anything else like this, but would love for you to come hang out. So that way, if I start to go down a path that is like not awesome, you can kind of nudge me back. Is that cool?
I would love that. Yes.
Awesome. Made my day.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Bethany. Appreciate it. And
thank you so much.
As always, thanks everyone in the comments for coming. Dylan. We had some lurkers in here today too, as well. That were just LinkedIn users, right?
We love lurkers.
Love lurkers.
Love our lurkers. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you again Monday for more Morning Bill. So
absolutely.
Thanks, y'all.
Cheers, everybody.